All right, guys, this is part two of the Great Depression lecture. So the next thing I want you to do after we did that chart on the major short-term and long-term causes slash shocks to the Great Depression, I want you to watch this video as an intro to the Great Depression. Now, a couple things I just kind of want you to get out of this, right? This is mainly the focus of what we're watching isn't the New Deal or FDR's response, but rather what was Hoover's response. So you got the video guide, you have the link to the video, fill in the answers, and then we're going to take a second to talk about the big takeaways. All right. So go ahead and pause me, go to that, watch that, and then come back. All right. Welcome back. So here's the deal, right? Obviously, I'm not there in class to kind of give you the big ideas, highlight stuff. So I'm going to try to do that this way, the best that I can. So, major ideas that we should take away from this. One, Hoover did a little bit, he did too little too late, right? I think a very fair criticism of Hoover here is he stuck to his ideology. Remember, he was a firm believer, along with all the other presidents in the 1920s, that business will take care of itself, that the government doesn't need to intervene or interfere in the economics of the nation, pure capitalism, basically, right? But the problem was he didn't do much, or what he could do didn't really have any great effect. So a couple things that the video talked about. One, he tried to cut income taxes. Income taxes were so low that you couldn't really make them any lower. The thought here being is if you cut income taxes, right, that means you're going to put more money in people's hands that they can then go and spend. As I kind of alluded to in the other video, there's a couple problems here. One, in a depression, people will tend to save and not spend. So any extra money people are going to get, they're going to sock away in case they then become victims of the Great Depression and lose a job. Also, the bigger problem here is the taxes are so low that it's not a big stimulus. And so few people really pay taxes, it wasn't a very big stimulus, which at present is one of the kind of concerns we're dealing with right now is that taxes are pretty low in this country. We can't really slash them much lower. So we may not have that tool or resource to help spur the economy if we need it. The other major issue I would say is that he refused to provide any form of social safety net. He left it to states and private charities. Again, that's him sticking to his ideology. People can certainly debate what the role of government is in a an economic downturn, but he didn't think it was his job and didn't do anything to really provide assistance or aid to those who were struggling. You know, I guess the thing he did was he's the reason we don't call them panics anymore and we call them depression. So thanks for that, Hoover. Number two, in fact, besides his response not doing much of anything to help, or the few things he started to do at the end didn't do much, uh, he actually did things worse. The Smoot-Hawley tariff that he introduces, which was designed to protect American businesses. Again, I get some of the logic here, right? You want to help American manufacturers by reducing competition and getting people to buy American made products. There's logic there. The problem is you're forgetting about the millions upon millions of customers that you could sell American made products to in other countries. But because of the Smoot-Hawley tariff, everyone else jacks up their tariffs, and we're in a rate war or a tariff war, and essentially nobody's trading with anybody. And so, yeah, that was kind of a silly thing to do, and it actually just made things worse. Uh, yeah, like, it was great that Ford tried to raise wages. It's great that he worked with companies to try to keep people on as much as possible and not lay people off. But at some point, you know, these companies have to act in their own self-interest and start laying people off. Uh, next big topic is the idea of the Dust Bowl. Now, I want to kind of go back to a previous unit where we talked about the expression for the Great Plains, right? They were nicknamed the Great American Desert, meaning they weren't particularly well designed for agriculture. But homesteaders during the Gilded Age were able to develop farming techniques through the helps of government research. They started using specific crops that grew well in drier climates. And so over those decades, farmers were able to successfully farm this land. The problem was they kept farming the land and stripping it of nutrients, and that essentially destroyed the soil, so they couldn't grow anything else. So that was the man-made side of this. Just too much farming on dry land without actually doing anything to kind of replenish the soil. The natural disaster. So beyond what farmers did, there was a drought. There was essentially uh, this incredibly dusty period where, or it's not dusty, dry period where The ground completely dried up. Now, that happens naturally, and then you also have over farming, which is strict line of nutrients and moisture. And of course, we get to this point. I don't think the video mentioned this expression called Okies. They talked about people going from um, the plains to California looking for jobs in the uh, farming industry there as migrant farm workers. The nickname they got were Okies. There's a famous book, Grapes of Wrath, which talks about these people moving from Oklahoma out to California. Now, here's the thing: so many people did it, whatever opportunities were out there quickly dried up, and suddenly you had a whole bunch of people in California who couldn't find work. And then the last big takeaway I want to make sure we focus on is this. Um, you know, Women typically did jobs that were considered to be more domestic, servants at home, secretaries at work, or an office setting. And so the reality is, when companies or wealthy people started feeling the pinch, they let go of their servants. Companies began to let go of what they felt were unnecessary staff, so maybe a secretary. So women were often the first to be fired. Um, and then also, sadly, the companies who had hired the blacks who moved north during the Great Migration began to also let them go first. Their priority, for some reason, was to keep their white workers employed and working. Also, if there was a job that a man could do, the woman might be let go, and a man might be given that job as well. So, there's this kind of this we see not only race, but this kind of like gender social norms playing a role in creating suffering for people during the Great Depression. All right, now the last thing I want you to do, I'm going to have you do this pretty much with everything we cover, which isn't that much, to be honest with you. Like I said in my email or my message to you guys, this is the last unit. The AP is not going to be testing us on the stuff going forward after this unit. So the last thing I want you to do, you will have to do a Great Depression quick write, similar to the one you did on the 1920s. So a couple things. Remember, it is time, so only click start when you're ready to go. This is a great. I need to basically make sure you are watching the videos, you're taking the notes, you are doing the things I want you to do, because again, this stuff is potentially going to be on the AP exam, even the shortened one. So you need to keep working. All right. As I've said before, and I think this will become even more important based on what I think the AP exam is going to look like, is that you need to be very good in your responses by giving specific examples and evidence. And I've stressed this before, you also need to make sure that you answer the question directly in the very first sentence and then start providing evidence as support. I don't know yet, but I have a feeling this is going to be the format for your AP exam, and we need to get a lot of practice in, which is why I'm also setting it up this way. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Keep going. I'll see you on the next.